Welcome to the latest edition of the Go Big or Go Home podcast. My name is Big Rich Richardson, and we are getting into building that perfect person for the NFL draft. And we talked about wide receivers in the last episode. Today, I'm going to build the ultimate running back. Now, of course, you're not going to find this ultimate running back because there are no androids out there running around that have the top of the line and all of these qualities. But when you're a scout, when you're a NFL pundit that's looking at who is going to be carrying your team for the next 8, 10, 6 years, depending on how running backs go, well, you want to try and get as many of these qualities as humanly possible. Granted, a lot of these guys are going to be old school guys that we're going to talk about. There's an equal amount, maybe even more, of newer school guys. But we've got to get into the first thing being, and something that a lot of people base everything for a running back on, is size. And we've got another one that'll go right along with the size as far as I'm concerned anyway. But for me, the perfect size of a running back right now is the New York Giants' Saquon Barkley. He's 6 foot, 230 pounds. He's evenly proportioned. He's got the thick legs so that he can get hit and run through people. But he also has the ability to use some elusive speed to get away from guys. He can go, his body is set up that he doesn't have a weak spot for people to be able to tackle him at. And he definitely is one of those guys that when you sit there and you look at him, he is that prototype size of an NFL player. So when you look at running backs, you want the size of the New York Giants' Saquon Barkley. Strength. And I saw some pictures of this. The strength of Cleveland Browns running back Nick Chubb is absolutely insane. The man, now you got to remember, he has had two severe knee injuries. But yet the man squats 600 pounds. Yeah, you heard me right. 600 pounds of squat. 600 pounds. There are linemen that don't squat 600 pounds. It's an absolutely unbelievable feat, and especially for a guy, like I said, that has had 2 reconstructive knee surgeries. This guy, you've seen him play. He's a freak on the field anyway. But to know that he's able to do things like that, you have to just look at it from the standpoint that, okay, this guy can run through people. But then you realize that he's got an over 400-pound bench press and an almost 400-pound power clean. And now you're looking at, not only is his lower body freakishly strong, but he's ridiculous in the upper body as well. So you get stiff-armed by a guy like Nick Chubb, or he squares those shoulders and drives into you. If you're a defensive back, good luck to you. If you're a linebacker, you might have a shot. A lineman, okay, you might have a chance. DBs are running for their life seeing this guy coming around the corner. So when you look at the size and strength go together in a lot of ways. And Saquon Barkley is a very strong young man. But he has got, Nick Chubb's freaky strength. I'll tell you who he reminds me of, and we'll go to the old school on this one, is Earl Campbell. The Tyler Rose. Earl Campbell was an absolute beast. You get anybody old school. I'm 48 years old. You get someone my age or older and ask them, hey, how good was Earl Campbell? How bad was Earl Campbell? This dude was bad with a capital B-A-D. Because he ran smooth out of his jersey one time. He just don't care. Honorable mention, Bo Jackson. Going along with the size and the strength, though, is sturdiness. Are you able to take hits? And on the flip side of that, are you able to avoid hits? Because taking hits is one thing. Taking hits, it's football. It's a collision sport. It's going to happen. But when you look at a running back getting squared up on and taking hits, there are 2 guys that, to me, were just superb at not taking that full-on, full-contact hit. Los Angeles Rams and Indianapolis Colts running back Eric Dickerson and Cowboys running back Emmitt Smith. Those two guys, if you go back and watch their film, they got wrapped up. They got hit maybe at an angle or from the side or a glancing blow or tripped up. You didn't see a whole lot of face mask to face mask, shoulder to shoulder, body to body tackle. And what really made it amazing was Dickerson being as tall as he was and the fact that he ran straight up and still didn't get hit square on that often. So he's one of those. But and Dickerson, yeah, he missed a bunch of games, which is why I can't use him for sturdiness, but I can definitely use him for the ability to avoid a direct hit. Emmett could avoid a direct hit, and he was sturdy. He even played when he was hurt. Lest we forget the game against the Giants, where he separates his shoulder and still finishes out the game and ends up with 170 yards. Emmett was one of those guys. He knew there were 16 games in the season, and he planned on playing 16 every year. Hence, part of the reason why he is currently, and probably will continue to be, the NFL's all-time rushing leader. Because the way that running backs are going now, I mean, to me, the only running back that might have a snowball's chance of catching him is Frank Gore, and that's if he plays a few more years. 18,335 yards. Tremendous. But go back and look. He went from 1990 to 2004 and played less than 15 games just 3 times. 2 of those were 14s. So in 93, he missed 2 games. And that was because of a holdout. In 94, he missed 1 game. In 96, he missed 1 game. 99, 1 game. 2001, 2 games. 2003 was a year that he missed 6 games. And then 2004, he only missed 1 game, and those were his 2 years in Arizona. Even when he went to Arizona, the guy didn't miss games. That's why I say the sturdiness, the durability. Guys now, forget it. And this, you got to remember, is with him averaging, and I'm saying averaging, for 226 games, he averaged carrying the ball 20 times a game. And he had some stretches there where he had a few years from 91 to, let's say, 96, where he was averaging 25 times a game. Not to mention the fact that he was catching the ball out of the backfield a little bit too, where he was catching 3 or 4 balls. So he's touching the ball between 25 and 30 times a game and not missing games. Nowadays, you don't have a guy able to touch the ball that often unless it's a very, very odd situation. But you also don't see them doing it for near that long. 15-year career. So, sturdiness. Emmitt Smith. Balance. And if you really get a chance to check out some New Orleans Saints film and watch Alvin Kamara, this guy is an absolute joke as far as his balance. He's not one of the fastest guys in the world. He's fast, don't get me wrong. But he's not 4.2, 4.3 speed. He's not the most flexible. He's not the most elusive guy. But his balance is just ridiculous. He very seldom goes down on the first hit. And if you don't wrap him up, you can forget it. Because if you don't wrap him up and he can bounce off of you, he's going to get a hand in the dirt, or he's just straight going to keep his legs churning. And that balance takes over, and it's just something tremendous that Kamara is able to put out there when the play you think is over. And Kamara keeps the play going. Hands. I mean, look, the guy became just the 3rd guy in history to rush for 1,000, receive for 1,000 this past year. And that's Christian McCaffrey. I mean, and I would put him in the same category as Marshall Faulk with his hands. You throw those little dump offs and those little wheel routes, and Christian McCaffrey is the guy that can make those plays constantly and doesn't drop the ball. You don't see, like with a lot of backs, they throw that little swing pass to the outside and it falls, it hits their hands and they drop it. Not a lot of running backs are made to catch the ball. In his particular case, yeah, they are. Of course, McCaffrey's dad was a wide receiver. So, he, I'm sure, worked out with Christian quite a bit. And when he was at Stanford, he had the opportunity to catch a lot of balls. And to me, that's a big, big part of his game is Christian McCaffrey has become that guy. Right this second, as of the date of this recording, he's the best running back in football. And I don't care what anybody else tries to tell you about Zeke or about Saquon Barkley or about any of these other guys. You look at Christian McCaffrey and Christian McCaffrey's game, and it's far and away, no questions asked, Christian McCaffrey. Now, can he keep it up? That's the biggest question. He's going to keep catching the ball the way he did. There's no doubt about that. Is he durable enough to keep running the ball the way he does? That's the big thing, because as sturdy as Emmett was, and as sturdy as a lot of other guys were for a couple of seasons, i.e. DeMarco Murray or an Earl Campbell or a Cedric Benson or a Sean Alexander, is McCaffrey going to pay for taking all those hits? And if he does, it could end up costing him the numbers that he could very possibly have by the time it's all said and done. So kind of keep that in the back of your mind. But when it comes to the hands of my perfect running back, got to go with Christian McCaffrey. There's no question about that. The speed. Now, I'm not talking about speed getting to the line of scrimmage, because most running backs, when you look at a starting running back in the NFL, they have pretty much the same get to the line speed to a degree. I'm talking about that speed once they hit a hole. And okay, I know I'm going to catch a lot of flack on this, and go big or go home 945@gmail.com. You think I'm crazy or you agree, please let me know about any of this stuff. Go big or go home 945@gmail.com. But Matt Breida of the San Francisco 49ers, the breakaway speed that he has in the 2019 season, it was documented, was the fastest in the NFL. Almost 23 miles an hour on the breakaway. It's ridiculous that kind of speed can be in that kind of a guy, because Matt Breida is not a small guy by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, yes, he's not, 6'3" and 240, but Matt Breida is a good size guy. I mean, you look, he's 5'11", 2 bills, and he's one of those guys too, like we talked about with the size and the strength of the legs and that. He's another one that's got those type of definitions in his legs and in his upper body as well. But Matt Breida, phenomenal speed, and once you can hit a hole that fast, that's what because once you hit the hole and get past, now you control the play. Now, does he have to get past the linebacker? Of course you got to get past second and third level. But that speed to break away, and if there's an angle, and if you can eliminate the angle for the defensive back, it's a huge key. That's why I'm going to take Matt Breida's speed. Give me his speed in a running back. Now, when we talk about elusiveness, it's part of the category we talked about with Emmitt Smith, where he never took solid hits. He didn't take that squared up hit. Well, now we're going to, you look at the elusiveness and the sturdiness together. Sturdiness of Emmitt Smith, when we talked about him, he never took a direct hit. But the most elusive running back, if I'm building that perfect running back, and that perfect running back is going to have the elusiveness of the greatest of all time, and that's Barry Sanders. Barry Sanders was, no questions asked, the man, the best. And for him to be able to do what he did for his entire career, with, let's remember, folks, an absolutely disastrous offensive line. The Detroit Lions were awful for 90% of his career. He never had a really good offensive line his entire career. So when you sit there and look at the fact that, people think about, well, you've got Walter Payton and you've got Emmett. I mean, Emmett played behind the greatest line of all time. And I'll never deny that fact, that Emmitt Smith and the Dallas Cowboys in that time frame had the greatest offensive line in the history of football. However, you look at a guy like Barry Sanders, he had the flip side of the coin, the worst, and I mean the worst, offensive line for many, many years. So he had to be elusive to get the yards. Everybody's seen the videos. If you're any kind of a football fan, you've seen those NFL Films videos where Barry Sanders stops and cuts back or dodges guys or spins around guys or just makes people look foolish trying to make a tackle and end up with empty arms. That kind of a thing. You have to be able to look at it from that standpoint, because to be elusive like that, there aren't very many guys today that can do that. And when you sit back and you look at it, you have to think, okay, what allows him to do that? Now, there's a couple things. A, he had really fast feet. B, he didn't have a lot of size. When it comes to size, I mean, he's 5'8", 5'9" at best. But also, you have to look at the fact that he had that uncanny ability, and I would also like to get his sixth sense, because he had the innate ability to feel a tackle coming and get away from it. And that's something that a lot of guys in the NFL today and the NFL in the past cannot do. So, go with the elusiveness of Barry Sanders. Now, the vision, because when you got a guy coming up to the line of scrimmage, he's gotten the ball, he's looking at the line of scrimmage, and he hasn't, or even before he gets the ball, pre-play, looking at who's in what positions and that kind of thing, looking at what holes are possibly going to be open, and then once the ball's snapped, looking at what holes are open and how they're opening up. There's two guys, one current day and one back in the day. Le'Veon Bell of the Jets and Walter Payton of the Chicago Bears. Those guys could see a hole and hit it as quick and as good as anybody ever. And whenever you're looking at those guys, watch how they watch the play develop. Especially Le'Veon Bell. He is the best at staying behind the line, watching a play develop, and as the hole opens, boom, he hits it. And that is one of the biggest things that you got to look at when you think about the vision of a running back, because he can see not only what's happening in front of him, but he can also see at the next level. He can also see what's coming on the sides. He can also have that innate ability of feeling what's behind him. But that vision of how the play is going to develop, these guys already know what's going to happen before the play even starts. And that's what makes these guys so very dangerous when it comes to being able to see what's fixing to happen. Scarily good at it. Because these guys have done extremely great things. When you look at the line, Walter Payton, similar situation to Barry Sanders. Walter Payton had awful lines. They didn't open up many holes at all. But if Walter Payton could find a crease, he was in it. If he had to run a sweep, he could outrun some guys. He wasn't the fastest guy on the team, but he could outrun some guys. He could outrun a lot of guys. But if he could get to the outside and get it where he was one-on-one with the DB, he had the moves that he could get around him. That's the kind of vision I'm talking about, that if these guys know that between tackle to tackle is going to be covered, they can get to the outside. They can run it as a sweep. They can run it as an off tackle. Heck, they can even let a play develop on a counter where maybe you're getting the ball on the strong side. You're going to switch over to the weak side, follow your pulling guard, and get that big hole. And then once the pulling guard comes through, you've got a whole nother vision of, wow, now I've got bigger holes. Here we go. So the vision of Le'Veon Bell and of Walter Payton. So now when we look at the ideal running back, the size of New York Giants Saquon Barkley, the strength of Nick Chubb of the Cleveland Browns, the balance of the Saints Alvin Kamara, the speed of Matt Breida of the 49ers, Barry Sanders of the Detroit Lions' elusiveness, the vision of a Le'Veon Bell or a Walter Payton, the hands of Christian McCaffrey, and the sturdiness of a guy named Emmitt Smith. Now, is there anybody in the 2020 draft that covers all those categories? No, because if there was, he would be the first pick in the draft. And there's a distinct possibility you're not going to see a running back taken until extremely late in the first round, or even if there is one taken in the first round. So taking all of that into consideration as well, you have to look at the running back situation in the NFL right now. The running back has kind of become, I don't want to say an afterthought, but it's not the key to the offense anymore. The quarterback is, of course, key. The number one receiver is the second key. And you have to be able to be an all-around back to play in the NFL right now. A Saquon Barkley, an Ezekiel Elliott, a Christian McCaffrey, a Nick Chubb, guys like that have to be able to catch the ball and run it because of the openness of the game as we sit here in 2020. If you don't have the ability to do that, that's where you run into problems. Guys like a Derrick Henry, guys like, hey, Frank Gore is still playing. And Frank Gore can't catch a ball for nothing. Yes, he's still reactive. Yes, he's still putting good numbers up coming down the end of his career. And he is definitely the exception, not the rule. So always look at that. When you're thinking about that ideal running back, look at the ideal running back right now. Because the ideal running back 20 years ago was definitely not the ideal running back that you're seeing teams try to go after here in 2020. But let me know what you think about all this. Go big or go home, 945@gmail.com. Go big or go home at 945. I'm sorry, go big or go home 945@gmail.com. Let me know, if you have a better example, or if you think one of these guys you would put in a different spot. Maybe it's the right guy, but a different quality of the same guy. Let me know what you guys think about all this. I will definitely do my best to try and respond to your emails in the next episode or two. The next episode, we've built the great receiver. We're building the great running back today. The next episode, we're going to build a great quarterback with the draft coming up for the 2020 draft in the NFL. And then we will also have our draft episode where we will talk about the draft itself, how it all played out. And I firmly believe that you're going to see the 2020 NFL draft with more moves than you've seen in a while, because I think you're going to see a lot of teams trading up and some teams purposely trading down to get extra picks. But until next time, when we go over the perfect NFL quarterback, it's Big Rich Richardson. Thank you for listening, and we appreciate you checking out the Go Big or Go Home podcast. Until next time, so long, everybody.